Hi ceramics class, welcome back. I hope everyone's having a great start of the year. We are going to start in clay. I know that seems a little daunting at home, but I'm going to give you as much information as possible to get a solid start. And we're going to start with one of the most basic types of building with clay, or hand building with clay, that there is, and that's the pinch pot. Most of you have probably made a pinch pot before, probably in an elementary class, and it may look a little bit lumpy and sloppy, and you may have memories of it being not a really elegant form, perhaps you might say. But the pinch pot method is actually one of the best ways to create a piece of pottery. It's one of the oldest forms of working in clay, and it's a really great thing to start off with because what you're using is your hands. Your main tool is your hands. And if you cannot control clay using your hands, then throwing other and more advanced tools or more advanced techniques and processes, or even like the potter's wheel into the mix, that's going to be very difficult. The number one tool in making clay forms is going to be your hands. So this is a real good practice exercise for you to get to know how to control the clay, how to get a feel for the clay literally, because your feel for the clay is creating your pot. So we're going to work small also. This is really great for working small, and we need to work small to preserve the small amount of clay that you have. This will be a nice starting off point for other building techniques. So what you're going to need some clay. I'm going to talk about cutting off the amount you need in a minute. I would keep your sponge handy. You're definitely going to need this scoring tool that you made. So you should have had this done last week in the DIY ceramic tools lesson. And you're going to need, ribs or any kind of tool that you can use to smooth down. Later on, we'll talk about decorating, but for right now, we're just going to talk about the form. We are going to be making a pinch pot, and then later on, you're going to make a second pinch pot, and you're going to join those two pieces together to create a hollow form. So this video is only going to deal with how to make a pinch pot, and then once you have that mastered, then there'll be another video. Actually, a fellow ceramic teacher has made a really great video that I'll be sharing with you later this week about how to join two hollow forms to create or two pinch pots to create one hollow form, and then you can kind of have fun with that and create like a sculpture of your own. Okay, so first of all, getting out clay. When you open your bag, you're going to cut off a small amount of clay. Now the clay that I'm giving you comes directly from the bag, and this clay has been compressed with big fancy machines. So you don't necessarily have to wedge your clay as much when it comes straight out. I'm going to cut off, let's see, a chunk of clay. It's kind of a weird shape because I'm working from a big cube and trying to work into a circle. I'm going to maybe put some of this back in a minute once I figure out how big I want my pinch pot to be. But please make sure the second you open the bag, get your clay out, and then very quickly close this bag back up. Tape it shut. Get a rubber band to keep it shut, but we do not want your clay to dry out. You are going to be learning, and probably next week, about how to reclaim clay, how to rehydrate your clay, because you will need to use every scrap of clay in your bag. Okay, so what we want is a ball of clay. So I'm gonna use my surface here, and I'm going to rotate and slam. There are other methods for wedging. This one is a classic, but for our purposes, we also need this to get into like a spherical shape. So slamming it on all sides gets it sort of cubic, and then we'll round it out. Now this is going to be too big. What I really want is something about racquetball size, like smaller than a baseball, but bigger than a golf ball. So racquetball, tennis ball size. This is a little bit big though. Remember, what we're doing is we're starting with a solid ball of clay, and we're going to hollow it out to create the inside of the pinch pot, which means the clay is going to expand a little bit. We don't want the pinch pot to be too big. So I'm going to take a little bit off, and that looks like a pretty good size. This looks like it's going to be not too big. So I'm going to put this piece of clay back in my bag, and I'm going to seal my bag back up. I'm going to press that clay down into the lump so it's kind of one with the main lump of clay. All right, so now we're ready. I'm gonna take my ball and I'm just going to round it out on all sides, which means just tossing it back and forth. And this kind of helps out with that wedging. Wedging is when you compress the clay to get rid of any air pockets or inconsistencies inside this clay. And just a little bit of pressure, usually if you wedge by doing the slam wedge method, if you do that about 20 to 25 times or about for a minute, you know, it usually is good. And I'm going to take off my rings because what's happening here is I'm getting little marks in my clay. So if you have rings on, you might want to take those off. So once you have your circle of clay, this is pre-pinch pot. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put my fingers down into it. I'm going to open it up and I'm going to pinch. But one of the things I want to make sure is all parts of my clay should be even. Anytime you're working in clay, even thickness is very key. Even thickness means it dries evenly and there's not wet spots and dry spots that will be pulling each other away from each other. Even thicknesses are more consistent, more stable. We always want to have even thicknesses. So your big task here is going to be to create a pinch pot using your hands that is even. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to put my thumb straight down like this. All right, this is creating my hole. And if you have ever done wheel throwing or you are interested in wheel throwing, this is somewhat similar to the act of opening up a piece of pottery. Only you're doing this with your hands. So I'm going to, with my thumb, I'm going to compress. And what I'm doing is I'm compressing between my thumb and my fingers. And I'm going to move it around. Now, when I'm doing this, one thing I'm checking for is thickness. I have one side, this side over here, I can feel it's thinner. This side over here, I can feel it's thicker. So my goal is to thin this side and don't thin this side. I want to move around and compress. And I'm going to ease up on my compressions where it's thinner. And I'm going to increase my compressions where it's thicker. So I'm going to just kind of, I'm not really pressing now. Okay, now I'm pressing. And I'm worried about getting the bottom of this even. So I might have some thicker parts up here in the top. I'm going to get that later. I'm going to try to get the bottom even. So you have to really pay attention to the feeling in your fingers. You can feel where the clay is thicker and you can feel where the clay is thinner. So you don't have to hold it the way I'm holding it. I'm trying to hold it so that it is easily accessible to you. Move around, move around. And then every once in a while, maybe put your middle fingers in there and kind of just smooth it out. Kind of get a feeling for how thick it is. And also notice I'm using the palm of my hand here to kind of help. I'm pressing between my fingers and the palm of my hand. It's always good if you're pressing clay to have a support on the other side of that clay wall. So now I'm going to go around to a little bit higher, like this top edge of my pinch pot where it's still a little bit thick. I'm going to go around there. And this is all you do. You just keep going around and around. Don't press the thin spots, just press the thick spots. And that might be even all the way around if that first thumb in the ball was really accurately centered. But sometimes it takes a little bit of working. Our goal is for this to be, well, I want it to be even. So I'm looking at this and it's starting to look pretty even. This is still a little bit thick. So if you think of like a cup, here's a flower pot. Think about how thick those walls are. If you think about, here's a dish. See how thick those walls are. Now there's a little bit of a curve there. But if you feel like a bowl or a cup, you can feel how thick those walls are. We may not get that thin, but think about how can you slowly, gradually pinch this out to being about that thick. And in this way, you can control the form and create a really nice spherical bowl. Okay, so let's say I've done that. I'm gonna probably work on this a little bit more. And then I'm going to get my sponge a little bit wet. I'm gonna wring it out. I don't want a lot of moisture on this sponge. And then you'll notice there's lots of cracks. It's because you are stretching clay out. If you have some cracks, that's not a big deal. You can add the tiniest bit of moisture and you can smooth that out. So I'm just taking my sponge, I'm smoothing this out, and then I'm gonna take my fingers and start to smooth it out. All right, so I'm going to take some time. I'm gonna smooth out the interior of my bowl. And notice I'm holding it with my hand to maintain that curved bottom. If I see any little bits here, I'm gonna go in there and fix that up. And as I'm adding a little water, what I can also do is kind of stretch it a little bit more, because now it has a little bit more water in it, just the tiniest bit. When I worked this clay in my hands, what happened was I dried out that clay. So by adding a tiny bit of that moisture back, don't flood it, but a tiny bit of that moisture gives that clay a little bit of new life. So I'm going to smooth that out so you can see the inside of my bowl. It's pretty smooth. And then another thing you can do is you can place it upside down on your table, and if you kind of pat it there, you can make this rim a little more even, and then you can start working on the outside. Just very gently and lovingly, I'm going to smooth this out, and I'm going to work on refining this. I'm going to try to cut this video off fairly soon so it's not endlessly long. And there are also written directions on a Google Slides that I'm sharing with you, so that if you need some written directions, you have both video and written directions to work from. But you could probably work right along this video, since this is in real time. Now, I have made lots of pinch pots, so yours might take longer. You know, taking some time to refine is the big deal here. Once you get the form, then I want you to take some time. Look, it just kind of spins right here on my tabletop. You can work on top of your craft foam, or you could work on top of your canvas. You may want to try to like tape it down. Like if you have a kitchen table that tape won't hurt, maybe take your craft foam or your canvas and tape it down, and then you have a workspace that's not going to move all around while you're working. So this is how to make a pinch pot. Your goal is going to be this week to do this twice, so they should be pretty good. You want them to be evenly thick, so whatever thickness you land on for the first one should be the same thickness for the second one. So I'm going to keep working on smoothing this out, and I could even kind of keep rounding it. I'm kind of pressing in a little bit like that to work on my shape. But what I want is an even rim. Again, tap, 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 tap. That gives you a nice even rim. And then you can kind of just smooth that out if that made a little bit of a weird thickness in some places. You can also create like a flat spot on the bottom if you would like. Although I wouldn't do that for both, because what you're going to do is you're going to create a second one, and then you're going to create a hollow form out of these two. And then we'll come up with some fun ways to finish those up. And that's going to be in another video. I have a video that I will share of an artist joining two pieces. Okay, that is how to create a pinch pot. We're not trying to make the world's greatest artwork here. We are working on technical skills of being able to control the clay and the clay thickness with our hands and create one really nice quality form. So go ahead, make your pinch pot. You might have been working alongside this video, and that's great. Spend some more time. I'm going to go back. I'm going to keep smoothing. I'm going to just keep fussing a little bit. And that's called refining, and refining is important. When you are done with this, wrap it up in some plastic and then set to work on your other pinch pot. Once you have 2 of these pinch pots, you will follow the directions in Google Classroom. I will have written directions, and I will have another video to show you how to combine those 2. And then you'll do a little research on Google to find some inspiration and then do something fun with that. All right. Have a great day.